Hey everybody, Jem Schofield here, and welcome to the Canon R5 C for video production training series. In this video, we're on location with cinematographer James Kwan, and we're going to be talking about some of the special video features of the R5 C. So let's go. I'd like to start by officially introducing you to James Kwan. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
James and I have known each other for many years now, and he is a cinematographer based out of Los Angeles and Albuquerque. And what is it that you primarily work on?
Features and commercials.
And then occasionally, I get James to work with me on creating educational content for Canon, actually quite a lot of it.
We've done a lot.
I don't know how I got you on this side of the camera.
I don't know either.
But I'm glad you're here. So this week we have been on location at a university campus in Oregon.
Yes.
And we have been working with a series of athletes on a promo, which really allows us to show a lot of the different features of the R5 C.
Yeah, it's been great.
And what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about some of the camera's special video features.
Sounds good.
To me, it's sort of those features that we can't just put into one category.
Sure.
So we can't say it's autofocus and image stabilization or rigging the camera, but it's a laundry list of things that I know you were using on this production, and we can just go through each of those and have a discussion.
Sure, sounds good.
So obviously nowadays, James, we're being asked to shoot vertical or portrait video.
Yes.
For a lot of the social stuff that's being created. So it's oftentimes going from a landscape or a 16:9 frame to a 9:16 frame.
Yes.
And so we made a decision for the promo to make sure that we had some of that stuff. So tell us a little bit about what you did for vertical.
Yeah, well, we use vertical video on these social media roll-ups where I was on Segway, on a Ronin, pushing in slowly on the athlete. Another time I used it was when I was shooting Evan, doing some warm-ups. You know, it was just nice to have a camera that had all my menus vertically, and I could just easily read all my settings and make sure they're all correct.
Yeah, I think that's probably the big thing, is that you've always been able to turn the camera 90 degrees and shoot vertically, but it's that whole workflow of being able to see things properly and having all of your settings there. Did you always do it on the Ronin and Segway, or did you do any handheld?
I did some handheld with Evan. He was doing the Javelin, and we knew that some of that was going to make it on social media. So I was just operating handheld, and again, because I could see my menus vertically, I didn't have to turn the camera around to make sure all my settings were the same. It worked great.
So let's talk about slow and fast recording inside of the camera, because it is pretty versatile in the R5 C. This camera allows you to do 8K up to 60 frames per second, 4K up to 120 frames per second. How were you using the camera for this production for slow and fast motion?
Well, in the promo, I used a lot of 60, but occasionally I also did 120, which not a lot of cameras can do. One of my favorite high-speed shots was Gabby on the hammer throw. Because of the dynamic movement and her hair and the swinging of the hammer, it looks great at 120 frames. Another great feature about the camera is it'll actually conform to your base frame rate, and it'll play it back in slow-mo for you. So, you know, I could play it back and make sure that shot was gonna work, and that's something that not all cameras can do. So it's great to have that ability.
Yeah, I also noticed that you weren't menu diving a lot in the camera because you have those direct touch controls, and up in that top left corner, you were accessing those recording settings and getting to and going between slow and fast motion and normal recording a lot. Yeah,
that's right. With just a few swipes on the menu, I could quickly get to SNF, or even just go to 59.94 frames a second. It just took a few seconds, and I didn't have to go deep into the menus to look for it.
So I know not technically slow and fast recording, James, but I did see that you were changing the camera over sometimes. For instance, when we took the drone up instead of shooting at 23.98, you put the camera into 29.97.
Sure. That's kind of a baby slow motion, if you call it that. Sometimes I still want things to almost move in real time, but just a little bit more elegant with drone, or just, maybe an athlete walking. Maybe the viewer kind of just pays a little bit more attention to a certain action or a move.
So in post, you would take 29.97 and conform it to 23.98.
Correct.
Yeah. And I also saw that sometimes when you wanted to use face detection inside of the camera, we would set it to 59.94p, and you would do that, record sound, and also get face detection.
Yeah, it was still great to use object tracking and face detection and all that. So we could just conform in post, but I could still get all those great autofocus abilities.
So one of the things that we're starting to see in these types of cameras are crop modes, because this is a full frame camera. So we can shoot with a 36 by 24 frame size. Did you use any of those crop modes at all in production?
Yes, I used Super 35 crop mode quite a bit. There are certain times during production where we didn't have a longer lens, or there wasn't time to swap. So for instance, when I was shooting Gabby doing the hammer throw behind the cage, I wanted a little bit more reach, so I could quickly go into Super 35 mode and it kind of get me there when I didn't have time for a longer lens.
Any other examples of when you use Super 35?
Yeah, up when we flew the camera on the drone, we also used Super 35 mode quite a few times, just so we could get a longer reach on the subject.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical when you're on a drone to use a wider lens. And so, for instance, if you were using something like the 16 or you were the wider focal length, you brought the drone down and you wanted to get more reach there, you could quickly switch over to Super 35, for instance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're on a gimbal, the lens changes take so much time, so it kind of robs your day of a few minutes here and there. So one way to just quickly simulate a lens change is just going into that crop mode.
So let's talk about the time-lapse feature inside of the camera, specifically related to the video mode, because a lot of people who are shooting time-lapse may be used to what we have in the photo mode in the R5 C, which is taking a series of stills, putting those back together in post-production and working that way. But what's really nice about the R5 C when you're in video mode with interval recording is that it's creating a video file for you. So what did you do, and what were the advantages to using that feature that way in the camera?
Well, we wanted to show a transition from day to night. So with the camera, I was able to shoot actually in RAW the entire time. So also a great feature about the camera in interval, you can actually play back when you're done and it plays as one clip, opposed to shooting it with a photo camera and then having to stitch that in post. We could be on site, play back instantly, and know if the shot worked or not.
So let's talk a little bit about 8K video with the R5 C, because while it's not 100% unique to a mirrorless camera, I think that the combination of the digital cinema camera mode or the video mode inside of the R5 C, along with the heat management system where you can do unlimited recording in 8K, really makes this a compelling camera for that type of production. And from what we were doing for everything we were shooting this week, we were using 8K in the camera a lot.
We were. So one thing great about this little camera is it shoots 8K RAW. We're using that with the drone, but also when we're at the beach with Evan, when we decided that we're gonna pick up an interview and use some green screen. So those extra pixels, that extra flexibility with RAW, it's amazing to have in such a small body.
Yeah, and you do have to think about that in terms of production. What happened for us when we were at the Oregon coast is a couple of things. We didn't have enough time.
Yep.
And it started to get really windy there.
Yeah, so we weren't going to be able to shoot an interview, but originally, we had wanted to shoot this interview at the beach, so we just grabbed 2 plates, knowing that later we'd get Evan again and shoot him in front of a green screen and kind of match that in post.
And we also had our sound recordist record some wild sound there, so we had some additional audio. And then we were taking notes in terms of camera height, what focal length we were shooting in, distance from camera sensor to subject matter, and then additionally making some notes in terms of time of day, position of sun, and then when we set up here, which happened to be on the track and field,
yes,
we had our grip and electric crew basically simulate, and we shot at almost the identical time of day.
Yeah, it's a great way to get an interview at a very specific location when you don't have the time.
You know, the other thing that I've really noticed is a few years ago, everybody was saying, oh, why would you ever want to shoot 8K video? We'll never need anything more than 4K. But as we move forward with things like virtual production, and we need to have projection to larger screens and things like that, or just have that flexibility in post, it's really important. We were finishing in 1080 or HD for a very long time. Some of us still are for certain projects, but most of us are shooting in 4K for HD. So the math is the same if you're shooting 8K for 4K. So if you need to finish in 4K and you want that flexibility in post-production, it makes a lot of sense sometimes to be able to shoot in that resolution.
Correct. Yeah, having the extra pixels doesn't hurt. Even if you down-res to 4K or 1080, you're going to have a sharper image. So it's always nice to have those extra pixels.
So 8K RAW, ST or LT is obviously preferable, but relatively data intensive.
Yeah.
So there is another option in the camera.
Yeah, there's HEVC. So, if you're limited on data, you could use that and save some data space.
But you can still shoot with that in log and in cinema gamut. So the last thing I want to talk about in this video, James, which I think can be forgotten because this is the R5 C for video production training series, is that this camera is a true hybrid camera.
Correct.
In every sense of the word.
Yeah, it's a full stills camera as well.
Yes, and when you're in photo mode in this camera, you're getting Canon's traditional stills menus and all of those options in there. This is arguably a flagship mirrorless camera for stills.
Yeah.
And we were doing this promo, and we were really thinking ahead in terms of marketing materials and things that could be used with this promo with these athletes. So talk a little bit about how we did that on this shoot.
Sure. Well, when I was done shooting a video segment, or I was leapfrogging to maybe the next setup, we had a very talented crew member, John Romer, who's a professional stills photographer and also DP himself. So he would come in and shoot for a marketing campaign while I was lighting the next set.
So it was great, James, because when you were doing your interviews and you were done with those and you were going off to a separate setup, John would come in with his R5 C set to photo mode. He would do a still shoot with them for the print campaign. And we just sort of had a system throughout the production where we were doing that, and it was a true hybrid camera.
It truly was. Yeah, it did photo, video all in one. It was awesome.
Thanks so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you.
So there you have it. Those are some of the special video features of the R5 C. If you haven't checked out the other videos in this series, please do so. And as always, the goal here is education. So thanks for watching.